Hi, everyone. Happy Sunday. We're back for another Sunday sew along. If you didn't know, this is a new thing I'm doing. This is my third Sunday in a row, and I'm not going to lie, I'm going to give myself a little pat on the back for that. I'm really trying my best to be more consistent with doing these Sundays sew alongs every Sunday afternoon. As long as I'm in town, I'm willing to do one. And feel like I have a lot to share with you guys. And you guys have had a major input on what I teach on my Sunday sew along. So sometimes it's a quick project, it's a technique, it's filled with lots of tips and tricks along the way. So I'm excited to bring this one to you today. I have my big machine in here. That's why I'm kind of like leaning here because I've never brought her in the studio and she takes up so much of my camera space. Like she's a big girl. she's my baby. So I've got my FOF in here with me today. And I am excited to teach you about flange binding. I made this table runner last weekend at a retreat. And this is the project I learned to do the flange binding on. See little Biscuit in the corner. She's always back here. Say hi, Biscuit. Say hi, Biscuit. She's always in here while I'm filming or going live or doing anything. So this is flange binding. I want to get it up nice and close. Do you see this little like white piece of fabric that's between my border and my binding? That's a flange binding. It kind of gives like a piping look to it. And that's what we're going to do today. It's a very subtle way to add a little bit of extra, I call finesse. I feel like it really dresses it up. It looks really good on something that is very feminine, but I honestly saw it on so many different types of projects over the weekend that I was like, I have to show this to you all. So I'm obsessed. We're going to do it today, and you're going to be amazed at how easy this is. By the way, these two pieces we sew together to make the binding. So you do it all in one shot when you attach it. That's what makes it so easy. But we're going to start out with our binding. And I feel like flange is one of those words that's just, it's a little on the cringy side. Is it just me? It just is kind of weird. And that's okay. I think we should rename it. So we can rename it. I feel like it should be like a peekaboo binding because this just peeks out. It lifts up. It's like a little peekaboo. You could almost call it a piping binding, but there's no cording in here, so it's not really true piping. But I feel like it's more of like a peekaboo binding. Anybody else? Anybody else? Flange. That's just not a fun word to say. I don't feel like it suffices for how beautiful it is. Flange is not a beautiful word, but this is a beautiful binding. So we're going to make it today. Okay. So to do this, because I didn't want to make a whole nother quilt project, I made just a quilt sampler, super easy. And we're going to, quilt this up with some binding, and we're going to do our flange binding. There is a difference in these two strip sizes. And believe it or not, this little peekaboo white part that I showed you, that is actually a bigger, wider piece than your binding piece. So just know that going in, that we're going to use this yellow for the flange, the peekaboo, and this is going to be my binding on my little quilt sampler here. One thing I noticed and one thing I learned from who taught me this method is if you have too many busy prints with this method of binding, that flange will get lost. So having something more solid or more bold in color or more neutral, like I did the white between the two prints, so it stands out. You want it to pop. You want it to be noticeable if you're going to take the time to do this, right? So what I did is I chose the red, darker color to go with the darker quilt top. And then I used the brighter, lighter yellow to be my flange. Okay, so I'm going to read off some measurements real quick to you. And I'm the worst with numbers, so I'm reading them because I want to make sure I tell them to you right, so you know exactly what I'm using. So the flange should be strips that are cut with the fabric, and they need to be 1 3/4 inch wide. 1 3/4 inch wide. That's what we're doing today. You can make it wider if you want, and then you'll adjust this as well, okay? But there is a 1/4 inch difference between your binding and your flange, and your flange will be a 1/4 inch bigger. So if you want to go bigger with your binding, then you need to go a 1/4 inch bigger with your flange, okay? So keep that in mind. So your flange strip needs to be 1 3/4 inches wide. Your binding strip that's going to go on the outside edge, it needs to be 1 1/2 inches wide, okay? And you're thinking, that sounds really narrow for binding, and it is, but we're sewing these together. And I sewed them together along the diagonal like you normally would for binding. And the first thing we're going to do is we're going to put these right sides together and sew them together. We're going to do a 1/4 inch seam allowance. I have my 1/4 inch foot on. I have a straight stitch. Okay, so I have my binding strips sewn together. So we've got this piece is going to be my binding, and it was cut at 1 1/2 inches wide. This piece is my flange, or my little peekaboo, and it is going to be 1 3/4 inches wide. And the reason why you want it to be wider is because this is going to be how we make it into the peekaboo. So what I'm going to do next, I'm going to give this a quick press. And I'm going to press it to my binding, so to the darker side. I'm pressing the seam allowance to the darker side. But you do need to make sure that your flange, the part that you want to be your little peekaboo, is wider, at least a 1/4 inch wider than the binding strip. It feels counterintuitive, so that's why I keep reiterating it, because even when I was learning this, I was like, wait, what? That sounds weird. And it is a little weird, but trust the process. Pressing is really important with this method. So now I'm going to flip it over and make sure that there is no like curling or fold over here. It's really smooth in this press right here. Okay, so here we have our 2 binding strips. So this is the binding, this is the flange. Now it's 1 binding strip, okay? So what I'm doing is I'm taking my pressed piece, it's now 1 piece, and I'm folding it wrong sides together. So the right sides are out, and I'm lining up these raw edges, and I'm gonna give it another press. And do you see what that's doing? That's creating that flange, that little peekaboo. Just a hint of it, okay? So I'm going to give this another really good press. So there is our binding. How pretty is that? So this is the back. I'm calling this the back of my quilt. This is the front, okay? So this is the front where I want that little peekaboo. Look how pretty that's going to be, okay? So with that being said, when you start this, you want to put your binding, everybody has a preference on, do I put my binding on back to front to back? It's personal preference. But when you do this method, you do need to sew it to the back first and then bring it to the front. I like to use clips. You can use pins. It's up to you. But you're going to clip this binding so that your piping is down, because what we're going to do is stitch along this 1/4 inch. We're going to fold it over and then fold it over again, and then stitch it from the front with our stitch in the ditch. And then that's it. It is so easy to do. And then I'm going to take you around a corner so you can see how to do a mitered corner with this method as well. All right. So you will clip this down your side, and we're going to stitch down. So I have my 1/4 inch foot on here still. All right. And so I'm just going to do a 1/4 inch seam allowance. I do backstitch when I start my binding. So when I get to the corner, I stop a 1/4 inch in from the corner. I pivot and I sew right off the corner. Okay, so that's how I like to do it. Everybody has a different method, and that's fine. I'm going to show you my preferred method. Okay, so I've got down to the corner, and then I will turn my fabric and my binding over here, and I will fold it up at an angle with that stitch. Does that make sense? Can you see that? So I'm going to fold it at the angle of that stitch. Okay. And then I'm going to fold it down. Now, a tip I share a lot in my videos, so if you've heard this before, you'll know. I never start right at the edge of my fabric. I always start in a little bit, and then I back up and back stitch to the edge, and then I go forward. And what that does is it prevents nesting under your foot with your needle, with your thread. I did not have enough binding to get all the way back around, which is fine. So we've got it attached and we've gone around our corners. And now what we're going to do is flip it over to the front, and look at, like, we've already got this like perfect little point coming around. Okay. So you're going to flip it. And what I like to do is give it a good press. So I give it a good press, and I'm just going to fold this to the front. So this is the front of my little quilt here. And I've got these corners, and this is where, wherever you start, you're going to start bringing it in. Now, here's the trick. Okay. Here's the trick. When you bring this forward to the front, you're not going to pull it and fold it all the way in. I mean, you could, but what we're doing is we're stitching in this little gap right here. And if we did that here, it's going to show way over here. It's not going to be kind of hidden. So what I like to do is see where we've stitched before and line this, use this as a line for where I'm going to stitch again, which is in this little ditch. Okay. So we're not pulling it all the way, and that gives us a little bit more even binding front to back. Okay. It's not going to be so tiny in the back and so big in the front. So we're kind of splitting the difference, and I'm lining that up. Now you can choose to use a little glue, a glue stick. It's totally up to you. I like to use clips, because what I do is my clip, and I've clipped it so that the edge of my clip hits right at that groove. And when I lift up my flange, you can't even see the stitch. You know, it's like right there. I can see it over here where I haven't clipped yet. So that's what we're trying to do. So I'm going to kind of go around place. Now, when you get to your corners, I like to kind of clip on both sides of my corner a little bit. It helps kind of guide it into place when it isn't working against, well, that clip just broke. It helps guide the corner into place when it's, already got, it's not working against something on the other side. So when I get to the corners, I just push down into one corner, and then I feed it down in the other corner. You kind of have to finesse it. If you get it just right, your flange is a good guide for that point. I need to get some new clips. So we've got it clipped down all the way around here. And I'm going to start here, and we're going to go all the way around. Or actually, I think I'm going to start over here. But what we're going to do next is put on a stitch in the ditch foot, okay, on our machine. So let me show you what that looks like. All right, so I'm going to take off my 1/4 inch foot. And there's two options here. I'll show you what you can use, what's recommended. this foot right here, I do my best to show you it. This is, because it's clear, this is a 1/4 inch stitch in the ditch. It's got this little metal kind of divide that divides the two right down the middle. And so it'll separate your fabric in the seam, and you can hide stitches in the seam. So that's what we're going to use today. Now there's also, and I don't know if every machine offers a foot like this, but this is a bi-level foot. If you have this, you can use this. It also has that same divide, but it's not right in the center. It's actually to the left a little bit. So if you do use the bi-level foot, check where your needle lands. What I had to do when I used this one last time is move my needle position over about two times to the left so that it was hitting in the, in the right spot when I was sewing. So you can use a bi-level foot, or you can use a stitch in the ditch foot, whichever one you have. You could use neither of these, okay? And, do it without it, and that's totally fine as well. Just know that it can be a little more challenging, and you'll want to really take your time, make sure you pressed it really well, okay? I'm going to put my foot down. And when I put my foot down, I can see that this guide is splitting between the yellow and the red, okay? Now I can also see that my needle, and I'm just going to hand crank this down a little bit. My needle kind of wants to hit right behind the guide into the red, and I want it to hit into the yellow. So what I want to do is move my needle position over maybe twice. That looks like a good position. Okay, we're going to give it a go. Sometimes you kind of have to tweak it a little as you go. So we're going to Now, as a normally fast sewer, as some of you know, like to sew really fast, this is one of those steps that if you want it to look really good, take your time. Once you get in the hang of it, you can go a little faster, but if you typically have a lead foot like I do, take your time. I'm just doing a little at a time. I'm using my hand to kind of straighten out and flatten my binding and my flange. And I'm keeping my guide between the yellow and the red. Now, typically when you do this, you want your thread color to match the flange. So it really hides it. I left the white in here, so hopefully you will be able to see my stitches on camera a little bit better. But the whole point is to not see your stitches. We're hiding them between the binding and the flange. And when you do it this way, it can give the look of like a hand stitched binding because you don't see the stitches from the front. Okay. Now you will see them on the back, and that's okay. But everybody looks at the front of your quilt. When you get to this point, you have to go slow. You need to stop right in the corner. So when you turn, this guide should be right between these again. See, I get a little comfortable when I go faster. Even with a camera in my face, and I can't really see where I'm going, but we're just gonna go for it. But it's looking so good. I know you probably can't see it yet on screen, but I will show it to you in just a second. I'm going to go around these two corners and down this other side, and then I'll take it off and show you. Now, sometimes it gets a little bulky in the corners, and you just have to move it ahead. There we go. All right, let's look at my work. Look at that. It looks really nice. It may be a little hard to tell on camera, but My stitches are right in here, and it's almost impossible to see them. I'm kind of pushing it back so you can kind of see them, okay? Now, if you press it, you wouldn't even be able to see the stitches. And then this little flange just kind of lifts us like a little peekaboo. It just lifts up, adds a little fun texture, little character, hits in those corners really nicely. Now on the back, you will see your stitches, but if we fold it just right, it'll hit right into your binding and not into your quilt. This will take some practice, but it's okay. I think it looks so good. Everybody's looking at the front of your project anyways. Now, if you did a yellow thread, I used a white so you can kind of see some of the stitching. But it's really subtle. It's really subtle. That is flange binding. That is it. That is it. That is all you have to do to add this little decorative detail to your quilt, whether it's a quilt topper, a table runner, a full-size quilt. I feel like this is going to be the only way I do quilt binding from now on, because I love that it hides the stitches. I would say that I prefer to machine bind because I don't have a lot of time to sit and hand sew, and I'm not very good at hand sewing. So if you like to hand sew and hand bind, that is totally fine. And you could probably hand sew this if you wanted to, but for those of us who like to machine bind our quilts, I feel like this is a great way to kind of hide the stitches on the front, because even when you do a regular binding with a machine bind, it is hard to hide some of those stitches and line them up perfectly. And I feel like this gives you the ability to kind of hide it a little bit better and have a more polished look in an easy way. And then you get this little flange, and it's just so fun and decorative, and it looks so impressive. But we literally just sewed 2 strips together to make the binding and then just sewed it on back to front. That was it. That was it. So if you felt like this was really helpful and you learned something today, please let me know. Please leave a comment, go like and share this video. We're going to do more quilting here on this YouTube channel. We're going to do a lot more of a lot of things. If you have something that you would love for me to show and teach on a Sunday sew along, any sort of technique, specific technique, please let me know. I want to make sure that the videos that I'm making for you here on my YouTube channel, especially in these sew-alongs, is something that you want to learn. So this little flange binding was a fun one, but be sure to subscribe. I do announce what I'm going to be doing in my email newsletters. If you go to craftwithbethany.com, you'll be able to see that newsletter pop up, and you can sign up for my newsletter. I don't bombard you with emails. The most I ever send in emails in a week is when I have an event launching, like a retreat or something, and that's it. She's always in here, and she likes to pop in, and she likes to be in here while I'm sewing and doing my lives. She got a bath today, so she's extra fluffy. I guess this is her quilt now. Okay, well, thank you guys for hanging out with us on a Sunday afternoon. Can you say thank you? And I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. And if you have any ideas for future ones, please, please, please let me know, and I'll be happy to work on those. If you do make a quilt and use this flange binding, please send me a picture or post a picture and tag me in it. I'd love to see it. And until then, happy sewing, have a great Sunday, and we'll see you later.